Dare to dream a bigger dream.
Welcome. My name is Kim Eickhoff. I am a business coach. I've been doing this for about 10 years now at this point. And today I have somebody that I admire greatly, Tom Degerlia. He has a company called Denverdata Web. And why don't we start, Tom, where you give us a little introduction about your business and when you got started with this, and maybe kind of, I know it has had several iterations. So what did that look like when you started way back when?
But where did it all start? I have been a software developer by trade most of my life. Did not work in the industry for the first part of my career, but transitioned there in my late 20s. So I formed Denverdata Web in 1998, 22 years ago in March, as a software development company, software solutions company, because that's really where my passion was.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, do you need more elaboration?
So how long ago was that?
22 years.
22 years. And you were a software development company. What kinds of things were you developing at that point?
When we started, I had transitioned from, I had a fair amount of experience in aviation, and also in analytical chemistry, which is a completely different business, but very similar in a lot of ways. Coming off of a career in aviation, and so I transitioned into a number of consulting jobs through, with at the time McDonnell Douglas, the Boeing company, and a variety of other, aircraft manufacturers and service providers, Jeppesen Sanderson, and those were my initial projects. And we very quickly branched out into a wide variety of industries where similar technologies were applicable.
Oh, wow. Cool. So then over the years, now you do, what's your main focus now?
As we progress, and probably, by the late, by the early 2000s, all of our solutions had consistently consolidated on as things that were accessible or usable via the web, interfacing to the web. And so at that point, the natural transition was for us to be a web application developer. And that's where we've resided ever since. So that's where our strength is. We understand the different platforms, understand the marketing, the user experience, graphic design, as well as the technical aspects.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So what would you say as an entrepreneur has been maybe one of your biggest challenges in growing your business?
My biggest challenge has been me. And I mean, it's not a joke, it's very true. That I historically was a very solitary operator, knew that I knew how to do things, but, may have had the sense that I had difficulty attracting and retaining people to assist me for a variety of reasons, from technical expertise to ability to communicate or deliver. There's a variety of factors, but over time I've come to find that the central theme to those difficulties was communication and leadership.
Gotcha. So you have worked fairly hard at that piece, then, it sounds like.
Yes, I have. In fact, when we started working with you now close to 8 years ago, I was 100% sure I knew everything about running a business, though I had not officially succeeded at that point. And we got a real trend of attracting new employees, getting them in, and then I would scare them away through my management style at some point, and we would repeat. And it was a very solid recurring trend. And there was also some just kind of basic assumptions I'd made about business that I held to be true, but had never really thought through very carefully, in terms of how people value the services that are being provided, standing by your value, having a good understanding of how to communicate with certain types of people, customers and employees. And that was a big learning experience for me. And that transition has helped me. I would not be where I'm at today without that transition.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask. So as you kind of identified these personal challenges, right, or things that within yourself that you needed to work on, how have you seen that affect your business? Like, the more you've worked on those things, what changes have you seen?
Well, I mean, the first change, which had to do with what at the point where I started to value myself and my time and stand by that value, versus trying to lowball contracts or underbid things, that the customers, that their respect or their understanding of that value came along for the ride.
Yeah.
That it occurred to me, or it became very clear that by trying to accommodate for customers and what I believe to be their sensitivities, was not always accurate and had the opposite outcome, that it tended to devalue how people perceived our services. So the effect has been people are happy and they stick with us over the long term.
Gotcha. And then how has that affect your ability to price things?
Pricing, pricing it has been a big evolution for me. I tell the story quite a bit that, the day that you came on, the first recommendation was, that we had been at the same pricing for a long time, and that we needed to kind of get up with modern times. And my fear immediately was, well, heck, we're going to lose all kinds of customers. I was absolutely terrified, and you chipped away at me for a little bit, and I finally agreed to do that. And the outcome was, I describe it as immediate, like that afternoon. I think that's probably an exaggeration, but it was very, very swift. That it was proven to me that by raising our prices to a level that was more appropriate, that we stood by, we lost the customers that were the ones that valued us the least, and we gained the customers that saw that value. And so they were immediately replaced by people that were happy to pay the bill and had fun project work to knock out. And some of the most challenging customers, the people that were nickel and diming us, that didn't see the value, that those faded away very quickly.
Yeah.
So the outcome was profound and amazing, and I was shocked, but I was a believer at that point.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how when we start charging what we know we're worth, we start attracting those customers or clients that will work with us because they'll pay that, and they're usually good clients because they then see the value in what they're paying, right? So they trust you, and there's an expertise there, and so it becomes more synergy. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have believed it, but it is proven to be true.
Well, it's kind of true in everything, right? Like in relationships or anything, you attract good people to you when you are in that kind of higher vibration, positive place, versus you're down on yourself.
That's right. And when you devalue yourself, people take with that a corresponding understanding of that devaluation, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So at this recording, we're in the middle of this pandemic, right? That the whole world's going through. And one of the reasons I started doing these videos right now is because I'm a big believer that entrepreneurs in particular are just highly adaptable, resilient, creative people. And you're definitely fit all of those descriptions, I would say, because you've lasted a long time in an industry that has changed so much. Technology has changed so much. So tell me a little bit about, do you agree with that, first of all? And then if you do, how do you see kind of maybe the challenges or the things you've already been through in your business, having to adapt and change? How do you see that being helpful now? And how has this time been for y'all? So there's a lot of questions.
I can definitely speak to that. You may have to remind me part of the question at the end, off track or head me off. But in a nutshell, having been in business 22 years, we've been through, this is our fourth, presuming this becomes a recession, which there's every indication it would, this is our fourth recession that we've been through. We went through the bust of, the Y2K, post Y2K tech bubble burst, which was a really big hit to my industry, followed by the 9/11, the 2001 Trade Center bombing that had a huge impact on the aviation industry. It was a real hit for us. And then in 2008, as we were, had finally solidly rebounded from the 2000 recession, we entered what was coined as the Great Recession. And we are just barely emerging from that as this COVID scare is hitting. So I've been through it before. I'm not particularly fearful necessarily. What I have learned is that it's a time to it's a time for change. It's a time to adapt or pivot, and you have to, and it has to happen quickly. You can't sit and wait for, to gradually transition. It has been a big change in everybody's life, and it impacts business in a very immediate way. And so you have to be ready to respond quickly. And more than anything, you have to be ready to respond, which is the bigger challenge for most people, is to, that there's a tendency to want to maintain status quo. Generally speaking, those kind of challenges are the things that motivate me more than kind of the daily routine. So I think to your point about entrepreneurs, that may be a common characteristic, is getting excited and having a problem that you want to solve. But I have seen historically that, and one of the things I warn my employee, not warn, but I advise them is, when something like this happens, it's not that you pivot your business necessarily, but that in a lot of ways you have to reinvent yourself. And that shouldn't be such a scary thing. It really is a fairly natural part of life. On average, we get one of these every 10 years. It is a very real fact of life. And at all times, you should be prepared for that eventuality.
So you made an interesting point where you said you learn that you have to do it quickly. And that's some things that I've heard from other experienced entrepreneurs who've been through 3 or 4 of these. What did y'all do quickly this time that maybe you're in an industry that has been affected, because we all have, but not horribly, like the restaurant industry or anything like that, right? Like you've always worked remotely to a certain extent. You can do that. So what have you had to do as far as pivoting? Has it been messaging? Has it been products and services? Has it been target markets? Like what did y'all do?
Well, first and foremost, we, when the thing started, we didn't know that we were in a protected industry. We didn't know that we were essential, or that there was any continuity. And in fact, different circumstances could have ended up very differently. So I certainly didn't make that presumption, which is, I guess, part of my answer is, you presume the worst and act quickly based on that presumption. But, the first thing that we did was start to recognize what is the nature of these rapid changes, what is happening. And, you characterize the restaurants and the brick and mortar businesses, people that where you were required to go into the shop to interact with those vendors, and begin to wrap a strategy around kind of the new normal, or at least the normal for the moment. And this particular one was characterized by people being on lockdown and working from home, and for a protracted period of time, which is a very scary thing. And what I can say for certainty is that even, certainly for small businesses and for many of even the very big businesses, they are not prepared financially for a 1, 2, 3 month interruption to revenue. And I mean, like a very, very substantial 80% drop in, the airlines. For example, the drop in, travel or the hospitality industry, restaurants, the drop in business was profound, catastrophic to those companies. And very few have the reserves to just sit back and pay people and, and weather the storm, that you have to come up with a different strategy. So, first step was to characterize what are those changes. And what I've seen is in these circumstances, there are often, that it's a big hit to the economy as a whole. However, there are often, winners and losers, for lack of a better way to characterize it. There are people who, restaurant employees, many of them were laid off almost immediately. It was clear that there was not going to be need for waiting staff at a restaurant if you weren't going to be able to have people in your restaurant for 90 days. But at the same time, there was an immediate transition for industries that, were well-funded and had a lot of continuity. And that transition was to telework, which is a realm of technology that's been mature for a long time, but has received a lot of reluctance from traditional businesses to make that transition. So it was a for the company, and I think of Zoom, who was in the right space at the right time. They are probably, turning a substantial profit right now.
Have you seen how Facebook now has these rooms they're trying to promote where you can do something similar like this, I think?
Everybody's trying to get on board. I even Google was trying to be at the center of this remote meeting technology, and but they didn't have the product that became the one. And they have quickly, even them, they have, they've got a good, strong revenue stream. They have had to pivot quickly as well. And are now offering something much more Zoom-like in a lot of ways, just to
Oh,
be
good.
because they did not win necessarily on that deal.
Yeah.
But
I'm
by all means,
surprised they didn't just buy Zoom,
that's probably the next step.
Mhm.
I wouldn't doubt it, or they might already own them and we just don't know it.
Right. Totally. So what did y'all do then? Because I mean, your guys can all, and women can work, remotely already. And I know there were days that most people did, like Wednesdays, right? But some people came to the office. So what did y'all do?
I joke that I've been successfully remoting to work since before I was a programmer, and so it's been more than 25 years that I've been able to accomplish most of my job through a remote arrangement. That doesn't mean I'm more productive from home, but that does mean that I'm I don't have the discipline to be more productive from home necessarily, but I'm remoting to work, and it doesn't interrupt. It only adds up to a less of a drive. For me, so it's fairly advantageous. My team was thirsting to not have to come to the office every day, and in some ways that it's produced. There's definitely some drawbacks from a social perspective, but it was a very seamless transition for us.
That's cool.
So it was not a big interruption to business operations, but it is a big interruption to arguably the mental health of of the team. Because this is a circumstance that's been especially stressful for every single person probably in the world at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of stress. I mean, I think just the uncertainty of everything, never knowing. I mean, one, we're not getting great direction from those in charge in a lot of ways, right? And then secondly, now we don't know how long this is going to last. Things are starting to open up, but not many people are trusting that and going out.
Right. It's a lot of unknown, which is scary.
So what do you do then around that for your team as a leader? How do you provide that stability and certainty as much as you can?
I mean, the first thing that we did, and this was more of a philosophical, conclusion, because in former recessions, I did act very quickly to reduce staff. But I recognize in this particular case, and maybe even in the past, that, preserving that team, however you can, and continuing to be, one cog in the greater machine that's still running and generating, building the economy. Is really important, that people don't just get scared and have a mass exodus out of business. I felt duty bound to look out for my team and ensure that to the extent that we could, that they were secure, and that we, and that there were opportunities that we could take advantage of if we really thought carefully about how to do this. And those opportunities weren't about taking advantage of a bad situation, but trying to help, trying to help be a steward of an economy that's going to go through a change, but will come back eventually. So that push is that, that to the extent that I'm not going to go out of business doing it, I want to support my employees, but I also want to support my vendors and our customers as well. So it's really important to do that, because there's a lot of people that are under way more stress than we've had to face.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, how do we keep going, keep bringing in enough work to pay the bills for, but one of the things you did early on, which I thought was really cool, and I don't know if you've had another one, but you did the I don't know what you called it, like a panelist roundtable discussion with experts in different fields. And you immediately started having conversations about, what do you see, like asking each person, right? What are they seeing? What kind of drove that? What was the decision to do that?
That was very much that strategic component of let's assess what's really going on and identify where. And in fact, that was the theme of the meeting. Was a roundtable of different business sectors, or representatives for different businesses that we've worked with or know through our network, and to get their thoughts on how would they characterize this particular this circumstance that we're going through, and what do they believe to be the opportunities, and who's going to be most affected, both the people that are negatively affected, but also the people that can realize new opportunities. And so that was the motivation, and what came out of it. We did that probably within a week of the lockdown, which was pretty early on in the entire in the entire process. At that point, we had already lost one customer who was firmly in both theater, which requires people to be present in the place, and then also education. And those are two industries that got hit really hard in terms of, you couldn't go to class and you can't go into a theater. Right. So and we got a pretty good cross section, everything from service providers, people in construction, a wide variety of industries. And what we learned from it is that we got a good sense for what other companies were trying to do from a social perspective, how they were trying to help the problem. And it was insightful that so many people that were succeeding were doing, were paying it forward in some way to ensure that the greater economy, survived, or that their business didn't get destroyed over it. A lot of contribution of, everything from, well, I kept paying my, my cleaning person, or I kept, I have continued to pay for my haircut, even though I'm not going to have one for 3 months. That kind of stuff. Which is very considerate and really resonated. And it made me think a lot about that. I was surprised to find out that less people had been put out of business, or had been affected to the point where they were no longer functioning. But there was also a number of people that, in specific industries, where either the change was really substantial and they were feeling those impacts in a very serious way, or that it was all but certain that would happen eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
It was some good insight that allowed us to look at where those opportunities lied and determine what role we might be able to play in those.
Yeah, what I liked about it too was the feeling of like you're not alone, because we had this, it was a great conversation, and there were some people on that who were not working anymore at that point because they couldn't, and then there was people who were like, has it really affected my business too much? I'm at home now, but I can still do the same thing. And that, I don't know, that always helps, knowing you're in a similar situation, right? Even if.
Absolutely, very. And we formed it for a pretty selfish reason, and that was to collect information, but it came out that everybody else was thirsting for the same info. It was absolutely very reassuring to go through that.
It was fun, just connecting with new people too, like that. So
absolutely.
So what do you see for y'all as we start to, I don't know if we're going to come out of this anytime soon, really, but like what's kind of your, and you don't have to give specifics, but just overall strategy as far as, are you planning, 2 weeks into the future, 90 days into the future? What's kind of your strategy overall right now?
We are definitely planning into the future. We're trying to keep an eye out for, typically we respond to where the opportunities are, and maintaining visibility through this time, especially as you're pivoting and your services are changing. We adjusted our marketing messages to maintain a positive tone, but to express the relevance we have to current circumstances, helping other companies become more remote capable, helping people go more online, traditional brick and mortar businesses begin to do sales online, transitioning systems that can accommodate for the current circumstances. And I don't know that all of those are permanent changes. Some of those are, maybe temporary, although they might be, fairly lengthy. But at some point, presumably this does, this does pass. People do get back to work, and we'll have some traditional, things will kind of come back to normal. But some things will never come back to normal. I have to imagine that the businesses that, the businesses that fold during this time are very likely not to come back. Certainly not in that incarnation. And the companies that come up to fill that vacuum will be much more thoughtful of how to to have a model that is more resilient to these kinds of changes. And of course, that doesn't prepare you for everything that might come down the road, but it prepares you for the next possibility of being locked out, in your home. So new restaurants will have a model that is more accommodating for distancing. That every business will have a model that allows for them to do business seamlessly online. And those will be big. Those will be permanent changes. Businesses that had reluctantly, very traditional businesses that very reluctantly embraced teleworking out of fears that they would be taken advantage of by their employees, have now realized that there is real advantage to it. And it's not the perfect model, but there are real advantages in a very appropriate place for telework. They may very, very well not go back to their facilities. And so, and I apologize if I'm not speaking to the question, but it was that, those are the things that we see kind of on the, short and long term, a very immediate change, but some things that will probably never go back.
Yeah. I was thinking about, you were just talking about people working from home, right? And what I wonder is what the productivity is for people working from home, because I mean, you're a dad, you have two boys, I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about this, but I have a lot of clients that have been like, oh my God, how am I going to, school my kids and keep running my business and all that sort of thing. But I don't know. I'm just wondering, have you found this balance between the two where you're still feeling like you're pretty productive, but you're having to do all this other stuff, or you feel like you're not productive at all right now? Like, what's your...
One of the first things I realized, because we don't have the option to go back to the office, is there was a reason why I got my office when I started, and that was because I've proven not to have the discipline to work from home effectively. That at work I can be distracted by only other items of work. At home I can be distracted by anything, and suddenly things like washing the dishes sounds like an all right, sound like a fun task when I'd rather, when I could be working. So I get distracted very easily, and it makes productivity difficult. The other real challenge for me, and I imagine for many other people, is the balance of home life and professional life. That it's very difficult to strike that separation that's really essential to to your mental health. That it gets a little foggy some days where my personal life ends and where my business life starts, and that isn't such a challenge when you're at the office. So it requires more discipline, and I think anybody that works from home will probably second that. Is that it isn't natural to want to be at home and get a bunch of stuff done, especially when you have other things that priorities at home that can easily look like a high priority compared to work. And so I have to make separation.
You're also, you like people. You're more of an extrovert sometimes. So so I think just that it's lonely at home sometimes, right? It's like,
hello, Kim. I didn't know I was an extrovert. It comes out until now, and man, I will accept it fully now. I'm desperately lonely, not having anybody to talk to.
Yes.
Like all my customers and all the people I got to talk to, and the coworkers and people we share space with. So yeah, it's I think it's probably toughest on the extroverts, especially the ones that didn't know that they were.
Surprise! All the things we learn about ourselves during the pandemic.
Like, man, I had no idea. I really like people.
Well, I mean, you go to networking events, and those have all been changed, and so it's tough.
But there was every indication that I was a people liker. I just never felt that I never would have characterized myself that way. And I realize now, man, I really like people, and I have a hard time dealing without them.
Good. That's good to know. Good to know about yourself.
Yeah, right.
All right. So kind of to wrap up, what if somebody's watching this that is thinking about, maybe they've lost their job, they've had a business idea, and they're thinking this could be a good time to take a chance and do it. What would you say to them? What's some advice you'd give?
My advice would be, yes, there is going to be a world of emerging opportunity, and I think that some strategic thought about where those opportunities lie, can lead to a very successful outcome. So I would say, have that confidence, do the research to characterize or quantify what those opportunities are. But my best example right now is that there will be many traditional businesses that will leave these storefront type locations, people that were selling things that simply did not have a way to do it online, that relied on local neighborhood traffic. Restaurants, your typical corner mall type stores, even specialty stores. Those are very, very, the people rely on those businesses, but they're going to be gone. And there's going to be a vacuum of, when people get back out into the world, and they're starting to do that right now, they're going to be thirsting for the things that they used to enjoy. They've been starved of a restaurant experience. They've been starved of their favorite restaurant. They haven't had an opportunity to go and frequent their regular stores or buy a plant or, all that stuff that almost can only be fulfilled locally. And they have a keen sense now for the importance or relevance of those things in their life. And many of those businesses won't be there when they go out to go back. But the opportunity is there will be a surplus of storefront property. There will be probably some diminished level of commercial property rates, at least for the time being. And you combine that with people's the immediate high demand for those things that made people feel happy and secure in the past, is a recipe for opportunity.
Well, and I also think about, because I mean, I know we have e-commerce and stuff like that, but like, is there a way to make, because if you have a storefront, there's still, I'm guessing, still going to be people who are going to want to do drive up, pickups or whatever, right? Curbside pickup or wherever they're called, or delivery. So is there a way on a website to have more of an experiential experience versus just staring at some products? Does that make sense? And I don't know if there is, and I don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of what, that not only are there new businesses emerging that are serving that new need, our society was already kind of going that way with Uber and Lyft and those kind of things. That now it's very clear that we need more of that stuff. Those companies, the companies that deliver food, for example, that they have gone from, not existing at all to being really very successful. And that's not going to go away. I mean, ultimately people may have been a little reluctant to move that direction because it was a new development, but in the long run, people are going to rely on home delivery and those things more often, maybe not as often as we are right now. But I do agree there's a lot of opportunity, not only to start a business that is that connection that allows somebody to do business more in a delivery or an online or a distributed fashion, but also for businesses to have that baked into their business plan.
Yeah. Right.
A restaurant that emerges will guaranteed have an online menu and a way to deliver and a curbside, an arrangement for curbside pickup or delivery. The people that I've seen, the traditional brick and mortar businesses that have responded most successfully were the ones that immediately moved to a model where you could order online or through your phone. You could pull up, and they had a simple mechanism to walk out to your car, hand you your stuff, and get you out of there. And I've seen, I think, of Village Roasters, who is kind of in our, in Lakewood by my house.
Mm-hmm.
They've been immensely successful, and they were at very serious risk. And they're not necessarily what I would consider to be a super progressive, tech-oriented company, but they were smart and they responded quickly, and they have been able to take advantage of people who are desperate to get their coffee. That there's no less demand for the things they offer. There just wasn't, and in fact, there is way less supply at the moment. So it ultimately probably added up to opportunity for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I ordered from one restaurant in Denver one night, and it took forever to get the food. It was just a nightmare. And then we ordered breakfast from Snooze one morning, and they pivoted quick. Like, they have it right there on their website, right there on the phone. When you go to it, you just order. It's so simple, and then you just pull up, and there's like a person standing outside in their outdoor thing. What's your name? They run back, they get your food, and it's so simple. So
it seems to divide along generational lines, that the willingness to quickly adopt that kind of model, had a lot to do with whether you were already kind of in that mindset already.
Yeah.
I think that Snooze has probably got ownership that is probably a little more, is a little younger than other companies. I do know that they've emerged in the market more recently. So yeah, they were probably of the mindset that they could quickly go, well, this is what we need to do. Whereas other people are like, well, how would we even do that?
They made it so simple.
Well, and I'll tell you that swift move is life or death, because those systems aren't trivial to develop, and if you have to figure out how to sell yourself on it before you even begin developing, you might miss the boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the challenge. I mean, I guess what it comes down to, and it's especially true in our business, is staying active and continuing to be involved with the progress of technology and how technology impacts our lives. I was teased in my third year in technology about being at high risk of becoming a dinosaur, and I've had to face that every day of my life since. Is, man, I better just stay on top of things at all times, because that's where those opportunities lie. So digging in and thinking that status quo is going to be there forever can be fatal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and that's totally true, because you think about where we would be during this without technology, it would be awful, right? It would just be awful. We wouldn't be able to communicate. It would just be.
10 years ago, it would have been way more catastrophic, because those things, the technologies are in place, and they were just struggling to get adoption. And I tell you, there's nothing that gets adoption faster than something like this.
Right.
Yeah, at least those things were in place and ready to be scaled up quickly.
Yeah. What was funny to me was, like, other people who had never used Zoom before, or any of these, and I have some friends that are in kind of older mindset type companies, when all this happened, all of a sudden they're on Zoom and they were talking about Zoom like it was this brand new thing. I was like, I've been using Zoom for like 3 or 4 years now, so it's funny the different sectors, and probably, working with people like you, I learn about this other stuff faster than other industries do. So it's helpful.
With technology companies. Yeah, I agree 100%. And what's funny is that people they get it really fast. It's not nearly as scary as people wanted to think when they were being thrust into it. I invited my mom to our virtual happy hour, and well, I don't know if I want to attend that, and I don't know how to do this. I've never used that before. I'm like, we'll take like 10 minutes. We'll get it set up, and it was a breeze, and she loved it. It was like a life-changing event for her.
That's great.
Something that was an area of fear for her that now she is fully embraced, and never will be afraid of that again.
That's so cute. Yeah, cool. That's great. Well, thank you, Tom. This has been really fun. I appreciate you joining me and answering my questions. Let people know how they can find you or get in touch with you.
How can you find us? We are Denverdata Web. We're located in Rhino, Denver, but we're also available online, and you can pretty much track us down anytime, day or night, if you have a problem, and we would love to help. We are welcoming customers that need assistance or even ideas. We don't charge to point you in the right direction, but if you've got a model where we can really be of value, we'd love to help. And the best way to reach us is go out to our website, denverdata.com. Or you can call our direct line, and there will be somebody that will return your call or answer almost immediately, and that is 303-537. I'm sorry, 303-534-1745.
1745. All right, cool. Thank you, sir. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Kim.
So dare to love, dare to laugh, take a stand, say yes to your path. Dare to shine, dare to fly, make a scene. Dare to dream a bigger dream.